What's up, friends? This week on the Changelog, we're talking about Passkeys with Anna Pobletts, head of Passwordless at 1Password. Will Passkeys enable a passwordless future? Time will tell. On today's episode, Anna shares all the details about Passkeys, where they came from, how to use them, how they're more secure, and why you should use them. A massive thank you to our friends and our partners at Fastly and Fly. Our pod got to you fast because Fastly is fast all around the world. Check them out at fastly.com. And our good friends over at fly.io, they help us put our app and our database close to you, our users, with no ops. Check them out at fly.io. Well, I'm here with Richard Moot, the API design lead for all of Square, and we're talking about the GraphQL API that is now in open alpha, looking for feedback. So, Richard, what's the story with this API?
So we've announced this at Unbox last year, and we've been just incrementally adding parts to our GraphQL API. It's been a big ask from developers within our community because it makes using Square's platform so much easier for particular things. You're no longer having to call 3 or 4 different APIs to pull together, a bunch of different data. And so we've just been trying to learn more and more how developers are planning on using this and making sure that we get this right before we actually transition to the next phase in its release.
So you have the Orders API out there, the Catalog API, the Customers API, the Merchants API, the Payments API, the Refunds API, and the Inventory API out there. And you also have the GraphQL Explorer out there. Tell me, what are you expecting from developers? What feedback do you want? What are your expectations?
I think our expectations is to find out all the different ways that you're using it and that we can make it better for you. I mean, right now, we've gotten really good feedback. We have, as soon as I announced the update to our docs that we recently did, the very first question that I got on Twitter from someone was when is this going out of alpha? And so we're really happy to see that. But we also are still wanting to hear from developers. You're implementing this, you're trying to build something. What is causing you angst? Is it issues with constraints around query depths or a number of queries? Is it fast enough for you? Are you trying to use it in a particular mobile app, Electron app or something? And what issues are you kind of coming across and how can we make it better? And I would definitely say that anything that you come across when you come and you try it out, whether it's in the GraphQL Explorer, in your command line, in your app, we want you to reach out to us on our Slack or our forums. Those would be great. You can also tweet at us. I will definitely be keeping an eye on that. But I will probably still always say hey, the forums are a great resource because we have a lot of questions that are already asked there. And we really just want to funnel all of that feedback to the team so that we can get this into there in time to make this ready for the next phase.
Very cool. Okay, so if you want to check this API out yourself, go to developer.squareup.com. Again, developer.squareup.com. It is an open alpha. They're looking for feedback. Hit them up on Slack, head to the forums, whatever works for you. Once again, developer.squareup.com.
We're joined by Anna Pobletts, head of Passwordless at 1Password. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, Jared. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. Excited to talk Passkeys. This is something I've been reading a little bit about, and I'm excited to maybe implement it in some of what we do here around Changelog. Shout out to listener Vladimir, who requested this show a long time ago. Hey, Vlad, we're finally getting around to it. Ooh. Thanks for your patience. Passkeys, where should we start, Adam? Just what are they and why, or is there a cooler place?
I can't see where else we would start. What are they? How do they work? Why should we use them? Why now?
All good questions.
Yeah, those all sound like great topics.
There you go.
All right, Anna, launch into it.
Yeah, so let's start at a high level. What is a passkey? From my perspective, a passkey is a new way to sign in to apps and websites without a password. There's a couple of reasons why that's a good thing. There's the security side of things, and then there's the user experience side of things. So we'll start with the security. The first thing there is that, passkeys are completely unphishable, and they're resistant to any type of credential-related attack. So all those things you hear about of companies getting breached, and there's giant password leaks, and people are reusing passwords in all these different places. Like, none of those attacks are relevant in a passkey world. So that's a huge win from a security perspective. Then there's also the user experience side, where they're really easy to use for users. It really looks and feels just like unlocking your device using Touch ID, Face ID, Windows Hello, whatever your device uses, that's what that experience looks like. And so I think this is the first time we've ever had both of those things happen at the same time, where there's a solution to log into websites that's better than passwords, that's both more secure and easier to use. Usually things are kind of only one or the other, right? You might have, we can add MFA to a website, and that's going to make it more secure. That's great. But that's extra steps. You have to get your app out of your phone, or check an email. That's not actually making anything easier. And so people aren't really going to use it. No one really signs up for MFA if it's optional. And so this is the first time you actually get both of those things.
Yeah. So I love this because I'm actually the head of Passwordless here at Changelog. You may know. And we've had Passwordless for a very long time, but doing it the dorky way, which is just send them an email, generate a one-time string, send them an email. And I did that because I hated the credential opportunity for failure with credentials. I saw the this email flow as your password recovery, reset your password was basically already doing it. So we already have these flows. Let's just send them an email, click on that, and then remember them for as long as possible. Our audience is smart people, our readers, they can sign out and they won't be surprised if they're signed in for a very long time. That is cool, but it's dorky because emails just don't come very fast every single time. And it's outside of our control, right? We can pick the best email delivery offering and all these things, but it's sometimes you just get that one that just bounces around from mail server to mail server, and you're sitting there for 5, 10, 30 minutes hey, where's my sign-in email? So it's not perfect.
It's definitely not, but honestly, y'all are ahead of your time. A lot of people haven't really been even considering any passwordless options, whether it's magic links or OTP codes or anything like that. And that's still a big win over a password from a security perspective. It's not a user-generated password that they're thinking of. It's really short-lived. So that is really great. Definitely better from a security experience.
Yeah, nothing to lose.
Exactly. Definitely a little bit of an improvement, but I hate having to change context and go check my email to log into a site, or if I'm on my phone or my Apple TV or something like that, and I have to go find a different device. It's just kind of a pain. And so I think passkeys are ultimately solving that UX problem, right? No one's going to adopt any of this stuff if it's not easy to use.
It's if you put the, YouTube, for example, on an Apple TV, if you want to authenticate with YouTube, you have to open up your phone or a device that has the YouTube app on it that is not your Apple TV. And that's not bad necessarily because you probably authenticated to that. It's all about how many hurdles / hoops can I make you jump through to keep you secure? And I think we've kind of band-aided, if that's a word, over time, how to do this. And even the OTPs, every time I got to pull out the Verify app from Unify, which I love. It's a great app. It's secure. I use it for my Unify network, and I like that app over others. But every time I have to do it, I'm like, gosh, where's my phone? Let me get that thing out. And it's biometric, so it's my face opening it up because I use an iPhone. And that makes me feel secure. But it's that's, like you said, context switching. It's more hoops and more hurdles to jump through and over.
Yeah. Jared, you said something interesting when you were describing your Magic Link implementation about, how the success rate of sign-in and things like that, of just are people actually getting emails? And so Google announced Passkeys on their services a couple weeks ago. So on your Gmail account now, you can actually add a passkey to sign in. And in their blog announcement, they talked about some really interesting stats. And one of them that I hadn't really thought about before was success on first attempt. So how often does someone succeed to log in the first time they try? And with passwords, that number's actually pretty low. It was, I think, twice as high when you switch to passkeys, because the first time you're okay, crap, I think my password is password, or it's password plus Google, or it's password 123.
My username is password, and my password is password.
Your username is password?
It was just easier.
Or like, which of my passwords did I use, right? And so actually like your success rate on your first attempt, or the number of times you have to go do a forgot password, is actually really high.
Yeah.
And so kind of lowering that threshold as well is really cool.
All right. So security win, obviously. User experience win, not so obviously, but it turns out it is. What are passkeys? How do they work? I hear it's like PKI, public key cryptography stuff. Tell us the details.
Yeah. So behind the scenes, we're using public key cryptography, protocols that have been around, algorithms that have been around for decades, even very well-established protocols just being used in a new way. So what happens is when you go to sign into a website or sign up for a website for the first time, your device or wherever you're storing your passkeys, I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but you can also store passkeys in 1Password. Wherever you're storing those passkeys, you will create a public-private key pair, and you'll store that private key in your provider on your device, and it's never going to leave. So it's never sent to the website. Instead, you'll send this public key to the website, and that public key can then be used to verify any future logins. So on future login, you say, I'm Anna, I want to log into this website. The website will send you a challenge, and you will sign that challenge with the private key. You'll send that back to the website, and the website can verify with the public key and say, you're all good, you're authenticated. Now, when I say you, like the user actually isn't doing anything here, right? This is all happening behind the scenes between your browser and the website and your provider, your device or your 1Password account, something like that. So it's all like really transparent to the user. All you're doing is essentially proving to the device that you own that device by doing your Touch ID, your Face ID,
Right.
and then that's granting your private key access to sign that challenge. And so it looks super transparent. It looks like you're just doing Touch ID, but behind the scenes, there's like all this cool cryptography going on.
Right.
Can I pause there for 1 second? This sounds a lot like SSH keys.
Doesn't it?
I mean, it sounds like you copy and paste the SSH keys in a way that everybody else can use, basically. Is that kind of what this is?
Kind of. I think it's like I said, it's really familiar like cryptographic concepts. So we didn't
Right.
invent a whole bunch of new crypto here. It's really just how we're using them and how we're using them to sort of in a user-friendly context. So there's always a user involved. You verify your presence by doing that Touch ID, and then you can authenticate. And so it's a very similar model, but it's actually like there's an aspect of you being there at the device at the moment of authentication that's important for like application and website login.
So it's been a long time since I was in college, but I actually learned this in college. Tell me if it's true still today. There's 3 ways to authenticate somebody. They can have something they know, right? So there's your password. Something they are, which is like your fingerprint, your eye scan, biometrics. And then something you have. And so I have a passkey. So this is like the something you have style authentication. And as Adam pointed out, like nerds have kind of been doing this. Like I have an SSH private key and a public key for a long time. And it's better. Like if you sign into a machine without password, it's always been better. Of course, then there's like the managing of that thing over time and like key rotation and stuff. But we've been using something we have for a while. Why not? Like my guess is like the ubiquity of mobile devices. Like why is now the time that passkeys are suddenly something we can do and not have to do something,
Yeah. So it's been a long time coming, right? Passwords have, I think, been around since like the 60s. Like,
Yeah.
What other technology do you use that's actually like, from that time period? Like, probably not much, but it's taken a long time. Like there's been a lot of attempts to replace it, a lot of like proprietary biometrics, things along those lines that are more the who you are or something you have.
Yeah.
But they always fail because you have to have special hardware, right? You have to like buy a thing and carry it with you. Even security keys, they're great in an enterprise environment, but kind of challenging in more of like a consumer, everyday user type of experience because people just don't want to have to buy and carry something else around with them all the time. And so about maybe 3 years ago, like 2019, 2020, Google, Microsoft, Apple all kind of came to this agreement that we're going to support these protocols and these APIs in our browsers and in our platforms, and we're going to give browsers and applications access to Face ID, Touch ID, other biometrics that are built into devices. And so that basically turned the thing everyone has in their pocket, a mobile device, into the equivalent of a security key, and like made it possible to actually do this in a way that would scale and reasonably for consumer applications.
So the hard part about something you know is you might forget it. The hard part about something you are, this is the hardest part, is like you can't change it. Like your fingerprint, right? Like once that's out, it's hard to revoke your fingerprint. The hard thing about something you have is when you don't have it anymore. And that's been my biggest struggle with specifically the authenticator devices, right? Which is the one-time passwords thing, is like you get that whole deal set up and you have it on your phone. And then you upgrade your phone or you lose your phone or something. And you're just completely out of, like, you have to go through a arduous reset process with a lot of these organizations, even so far as like scanning your photo ID in order for them to be like, this is actually you. Of course, they don't want some imposter to fraudulently claim that they're you. Is that a big problem upcoming with Passkeys, where if it's something you have on your device and you don't have your device, you're out of luck? Yeah,
it is by far the biggest like technical problem with Passkeys, I think, is how we manage account recovery. So, the first time anyone heard about the term Passkeys was about a year ago, right? It was WWDC last year. And before that, this protocol still existed. It was called WebAuthn. And some websites were still implementing this, but it was every single passkey was tied to the TPM of a device, and there was no way to get it off. So if you lost that device, it was just gone. That you could never get that passkey back. You had to go through the whole whatever that website deemed was a recovery process, and there wasn't really anything you could do about it.
Right.
So the big announcement of Passkeys is essentially saying we're going to take those WebAuthn credentials that have been around for years, and we're now going to sync them. We're going to sync them across your platform accounts, across secure end-to-end encrypted channels. So now you can sync Passkeys through your iCloud account or your Google account or your 1Password account. And so, yeah, I might lose, I have an Android phone. I might lose my phone or get a new phone. But as long as I can log into my Google account, those Passkeys will automatically sync. They'll also be shared across any devices that I have in the same ecosystem. Things like that to help you kind of have Passkeys more accessible in different places to help with the account recovery problem. It's still not perfect by any means, but it really was almost unusable before that. It was so much work to manage your different devices that had Passkeys. With Passkeys as they are now, where they're synced between devices, it's at least a little bit more accessible to people, and we can start to really focus on the more narrow account recovery problem.
This kind of somewhat reminds me of people who focus on backups, but not recovery, right? Like you think, I got to back this up, and you got a great backup protocol. It's amazing.
Right.
Okay, let's recover that data. Oh, we didn't think about that. So why was the, recovery process an afterthought with WebAuthn and now Passkeys? Why didn't it go through the paces of actually thinking through this through?
I think they always thought about it, and we always knew it was going to be a problem. But the goal of WebAuthn and Passkeys was phishing resistant authentication, right? And so a huge part of that is tying a credential to a device and also cryptographically tying a device to a domain, right? And so my facebook.com credential, you can't spoof facebook.com with, using a 0 instead of an O. That credential will simply not work. It will never be sent to that domain. So all of these unphishable, really high security properties are really important. That was the core of WebAuthn and of Passkeys. But those are also the things that make it really hard to do account recovery. With a password, you have one user, one password on any device. With Passkeys or WebAuthn, you have one user and n number of devices or passkeys, depending on their laptop and their iPad and their phone and all the different devices they might use. You have to kind of have a different passkey. So it just sort of comes with the protocol, but it was all kept with security in mind.
Is Passkeys a doing business as name where WebAuthn truly is the LLC or Inc., but you're doing business as Passkeys?
WebAuthn, DBA Passkeys?
Yeah, how does this work? Is it now Passkeys or is it both?
So WebAuthn is the specification from W3C. If you want a really long read, feel free to go check it out. Okay. Passkeys is the user-friendly term. If I were to just go to my mom and talk about WebAuthn credentials, that's not a very approachable term. And so part of renaming them Passkeys instead of just like syncable WebAuthn credentials was to make it like accessible to people, not make them scared of it, be able to put that on my target.com website and say Passkeys and not have people kind of just be really confused.
WebAuthn is so much. I'm just kidding. It's not cool.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not cool. So who owns Passkeys? Is it a branded term? Did Apple come up with this? Is there a, copyright to this name or trademark? Sorry. Is this, who owns Passkeys?
I'm not actually sure.
She is not a lawyer.
I don't want to speak on that subject. I'm going to get in trouble. I do know there's a group called the FIDO Alliance, which is like an industry organization that is working to like make passwordless authentication a reality. And they've been around for, I think this year was their 10th anniversary, actually. So all the major platforms are members. 1Password and other password managers are members, lots of websites who are interested in this. And we've all just been working to like make this WebAuthn technology real. And so Passkeys is a very natural evolution of that. We put out a lot of like guidelines about UX and how to add this to your website and things like that. And so, I don't know that they own any sort of trademark or IP about that, but they are doing a lot of work in that space and like trying to help people adopt it in a really consistent way. Because if you look at websites that have Passkeys now, people call it different things. The user flows are all different. Everyone's kind of doing different things. So we're trying to make it a little more consistent so that when you see Passkeys in one site and then you see it again in another site, you like know it's the same thing, right? You can have confidence that this is like a secure way to log in.
Well, it's a great name. I think it's awesome that these different organizations are coming together and rallying around one thing. This is kind of like the utopic view of like open specs and like everybody just comes to the table with their good ideas. I mean, I'm sure there's probably things going on around the fringes, but it sounds like it's coming together really well. You have a spec, you have different, the confluence of events of like the ubiquity of mobile devices as kind of like a baseline passkey holder, right? You have the support of the people who put the software on those devices, namely Google and Apple in the case of iOS and Android. And then you have folks like yourselves who are putting out software, how-tos, different things so that people can go ahead and build this flow into their website. I'm just super excited because I'm so done with passwords in my life and everybody else's life. I would love to see a passkey-based, like a default passkey-based world out there. How do we get there? What does it look like, I guess, maybe in the small, like for a single website owner to implement something like this? And then maybe, what does the trends look like maybe as a secondary follow-up?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it's definitely a little more difficult to implement into a website than passwords. Like I mentioned before, this sort of password model is one user, one password, works everywhere. With having to like manage passkeys on different devices, it gets a little bit trickier because every user can have like a whole list of credentials, right? And they might be able to sign in with some of them on some devices and not on other devices. So it's a little bit trickier. There are web APIs, libraries, all that kind of stuff to help. This is a problem I've personally been thinking about for a while now. And at 1Password, we have a product called Passage that just launched a couple weeks ago that's designed to help people do this, right? We're trying to be Twilio or Stripe for passkeys and make it easy with SDKs and UI elements, things like that, to let developers just like implement passkeys in their website in a couple days and move on, right? Like you should be able to get this without having to like spend all your time or understand all of the inner workings of passkeys. Like people shouldn't have to worry about that. They should just be able to kind of use it out of the box and get all the benefits.
This episode is brought to you by our friends at Drata. Automate and accelerate your SOC 2 compliance, your ISO 27001 compliance, and many, many more compliance frameworks. With a suite of more than 75 integrations, Drata easily integrates with your tech stack through applications such as AWS, Azure, GitHub, Okta, and Cloudflare, and countless security professionals from companies including Lemonade, Notion, and Fivetran have shared how crucial it has been to have Drata as a trusted partner in the compliance process. They have deep native integrations that provide instant visibility into a security program and continuous monitoring to ensure compliance is always met. Drata allows companies to see all their controls, easily map them to SOC 2, ISO 27001, and many other frameworks to gain immediate insight into framework overlap. They are the only player in the industry to build on a private database architecture from day one, meaning your data can never be accessed by anyone outside your organization. It is time to say goodbye to manual evidence collection and hello to automated compliance by visiting drata.com/partner/changelog. That's drata.com/partner/changelog. They are bringing automation to compliance at Drata speed.
Was this 1Password's first move into like developer services? Because you've always been like a business to consumer, you know, like buy our software or subscribe to our software. But now this is like, we are going to be a Twilio, or would love to be a Twilio for Passkeys. That seems like a change in direction, or maybe just another direction.
Yeah, so we do have some developer tools, actually. If you've never used them, you should check it out. We have like a CLI tool that for secrets management and shell plugins and all sorts of really cool developer tools.
Right.
But you are right, it's a little bit of a different approach as far as like where a different business line and like where we fit in the organization. It's interesting because 1Password's whole mission and goal has always been just make sign-in easier for people, right? We're just trying to make it easier for people to log in on the internet. And so the password manager is doing that from the user's perspective. They're giving users a tool to sign in easier, to manage all of their credentials. And then Passage is kind of taking it from the other angle of we want to make people more secure by helping businesses give their users the best possible authentication. And you can't really do one without the other, right? So if websites don't actually implement passkeys, users can't use them. And if users are intimidated by the technology or they don't have easy ways to store their passkeys, then they're never going to use them even if websites adopt them. And so the way we were thinking about it is like both Passage and the password manager are working towards the same goal of just eliminating passwords completely as much as possible.
Yeah.
And then also helping them transition, right? Like, unfortunately, passwords probably not going away anytime soon. It's going to be a little while. So 1Password is in a unique position to kind of help people with all the different credentials. You have passwords, you have OTP codes, you have passkeys, and just kind of help people manage that whole process.
Mm-hmm. I store my SSH keys in 1Password. I'm one of those people who uses the 1Password CLI. I believe it's called OP or something like that. I don't use it often, but I've used it, which I love because I have biometrically SSH into servers on the network or on the internet, you know, via having my stuff in there, which I love. Like biometrically getting into something to me is the way to go. It's the future because you can't, I suppose if you cut my finger off, then maybe you could be me, but like that's really bad and something bad's happened to me. So I got different problems.
Yeah. I mean, if someone cuts your finger off, you got bigger problems.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, they could steal my eyes like they've done in different, you know, sci-fi movies, you know, to get into
that network attached storage is not going to be your problem at that point. Right?
No, we got different issues, but I mean,
Yeah, not my SSH keys.
that's my best effort though, to like be me, right? I can't, like Jared said before, I can't change my fingerprints. Last time I checked, maybe I could burn them off and put different ones on. Who knows? But that's going to be me forever. And my face is my face. You know, as I age, it may change, but I think Face ID is smart enough to go with that aging process as a human being.
Totally. I do actually want to clarify one point about this because I think it's important from like maybe like a privacy perspective is when we're talking about like, you know, my fingerprint or my face is being used to authenticate to these sites. Like that's true, but those are just being used to authenticate like locally on your device, right? Like these random websites that you're signing into do not have your fingerprint data, or your face data, or anything like that, right?
Right.
And so it's all about like, it's almost more, it's less about what you are, like your biometric, and more about what you have, your device, right? You're really just proving that you own that device through biometrics. And so it looks really easy, but I think it's an important distinction there because I could totally reasonably, people would get caught up in the idea that, you know, my biometrics are just being sent across the internet. And that's not the case.
It's like you have a key like in a box right? And the key's going to get you into the room, but the box is locked. And to open the box, you got to put your fingerprint on there. That opens the box, gets the key out, puts it in the room.
Yep, exactly.
In the door. I've been playing a lot of Tears of the Kingdom, so sorry for bringing Zelda video games into this.
Well, we like that, it's part of it.
Yeah, you might have to ascend up through the roof, but keep going.
Yeah, well, the point is that whatever the process is, WebAuthn, Passkeys, the DBA for this cool new biz, is essentially I have to authenticate to my device first, and the device says, okay, this is truly Adam, so you can now passkey away. And that's what I love. Like, even now being SSHing into machines with, I know I'm not biometric sending my, stuff over there to the machine, but it's authenticating me to my device. Yes, this is Adam.
Right.
Trust this process. There you go. That's the future, right? To prove I'm me in the best way possible. And that's how you do it.
Totally. And you don't even have to think about it, right? I think we talk about this idea of like password hygiene a lot, and users having to think up passwords and not reuse them and all that kind of stuff. And like, people aren't trying to be insecure. It's like actually hard. I have like well over 200 passwords I'm keeping track of. Like, that's really hard. And so the idea of I'm just using my finger and I don't have to think about what I'm doing, but I'm just automatically secure and it's built in it's just so nice. Like, to not have to put that burden on people.
Can we just rant real quick about password requirements too? Like, it must really be between 8 and 20 characters. It must have a special character. It must have a number and a capital. It's like, just leave me alone. Like, the only one of those that's legit is it has to be longer than X, and X should be like 8, 4 to 8. Don't put a maximum limit on my password. Ridiculous.
Yes.
Don't require. Anyways.
And for a long time, they used to make you rotate them like every 3 months.
Yeah.
Like, I can't think of new ones that often.
Right. And then some very smart people would keep a list of your most recently used ones. And they're like, you can't just go back and forth between two. They're like, no, you used that one 3 times ago. Like, I hate you.
That means they're just storing all of your old passwords.
I'm just trying to check my email,
Let me in. I was going to mention Steve Krug's book, because like, this is the ultimate user experience. If you've ever heard of this book, stop me. It is called literally Don't Make Me Think. And like, it was about web and web development in its original edition. I think it's been revised a couple times at least, but the basic premise is there, right? If you've got passwords out there, you're making people who don't, like you said, want to be insecure think about this process. And before password managers like 1Password and others, you literally had to keep a spreadsheet that was probably insecure, or a file with permissions on your local machine. I don't know. How would you even manage these things and then generate them and then be more than 16 and have these special characters? It's like, that's making me think as a user. Now we're at a place with Passkeys where you have to think less. Like, there's still some thought in there, I'm sure, but it's minimized to almost the littlest possible necessary to think about being secure. And I guess it's sort of built into your devices now. So like, if my iPhone supports it, like Apple supports it, then I don't have to think anymore about passwords.
Exactly. You're just making the easy thing, the secure thing. No one has to think about it. It just works. That's all anyone really wants. They just want to go buy something from Target or go read an article on New York Times. Like, they don't want to think about how they have to authenticate.
How do we educate people? And maybe that's not the best way to describe it. So let me give you an example. I use Home Depot. It's my favorite place to go. I do not like Lowe's. Home Depot, if you want to sponsor us, I would gladly accept that.
I'm a Lowe's guy.
Oh, gosh. Just the great divide. The great divide. Anyways.
Lowe's, if you'd like to sponsor us, we'd love it.
We'll deny that request and replace you with Home Depot right away. So,
it helps. I'm Team Home Depot.
Oh, no.
Break the tie.
Okay, great. 2-1 here.
That does not help, Anna. Thanks for nothing.
So I obviously keep my credentials to homedepot.com in 1Password, because I am a tried and true, more than a decade now, 1Password user. And so that's great. But every time I go there, I have to use this scanning thing to prove that I was in the military to get this military discount they offer. And I have to do that every time I make a purchase. So I have to essentially authenticate with their website every time I'm a consumer, whether it's on the web, which is obvious, or literally in person. I have to scan this code that's only on the web, that's generated. It's like a QR code, essentially. So I have to authenticate all the time. And I have been resisting this other way they've said before, because they did not describe it as Passkeys. They did not describe it as no password. They said there's another way that you can log in faster. And I thought it was like some sort of gimmick. So what I'm getting at is, how do we describe to users in a world that's password filled to a passwordless world? How do we describe this? Like, because I spent a couple months resisting this Passkeys world with Home Depot offering it to me. And now that I know about Passkeys, and here I am, like, host of the Changelog forever, should know these things. I do not know much about Passkeys. And I resisted. And the other day I was like, Jared, I just created a passkey today. It was like 3 days ago. And it was with Home Depot. So, but how they explained it was not normal, or I didn't read it right.
Yeah.
Or they made me think. So how do we live in this world where we go from passwords being the norm to passkeys and how they work? How do you, it's a marketing challenge, right? Like, it's a uphill battle.
It really is. Like, it's a really hard problem. People are used to passwords. And so, like I said, you're just trying to go buy something from Home Depot. They're just trying to read an article. Like, I'm not sure that that's the right time to be saying, like, here's some new fancy technology, like right when they're in the middle of trying to do something. We did some UX research as part of the FIDO Alliance, and that was actually one of the findings was there are times to actually not tell people about passkeys because they're kind of busy and like they're really focused on their goal. But what we found is that users don't necessarily respond to the security benefits of passkeys. It's more about the user experience and the speed of signing in and not having to use a password, like explicitly saying things like sign in without a password is a pretty appealing thing to people to at least go check it out. And so I think those things are moving in the right direction. We're doing tons of research on the marketing there. I also think it's just going to take some time. Like Google just implemented passkeys for Gmail and for personal accounts. And that's billions of people around the world who now might start to see a passkey experience. And it'll still take some time, but I think once people see it the first time, right? You've done it now one time. Aren't you just like, wow, I want this everywhere. This is amazing.
Can't wait till I can do it again. Yes.
Like literally that. And so I think it's just getting people to that first experience, whether that's through the really big websites and players like Google, or giving people a really consistent experience. So the Home Depot login experience with passkeys and the terms that they use are kind of different than Google or Best Buy or eBay or any of these big sites that have passkeys now. Some of them don't even use the term passkey. So I think it's just kind of confusing. Like you wouldn't necessarily know that those are all the same thing until you actually go through the flow and start to set it up. And so we've been talking a lot about like, how do we make it more consistent? How do we give people parameters and assistance in the UX of this to make sure users are just like, oh yes, passkeys, I've heard about that. Let me go set that up everywhere I can.
Yeah. Well, shout out to Home Depot for having the software at least rolled out. And then we could just tell them, if you're listening, Home Depot, just use the word passkeys on there, right? So you like, let's just...
They may have, Jared. Honestly, they may have.
Oh, so it's on you.
It seemed like some sort of benefit from Home Depot directly.
Right.
And, sometimes brands have other motives for making me change my common workflow and pattern. I just was resisting. I'm like, whatever that is, I know how to log in with 1Password to your site. Leave me alone. I don't understand what you're asking me to do. And it was like, it was a bother because I'm trying to transact. I'm not trying to deepen my relationship or become more secure or become educated about this new fangled thing. Get off my lawn. Let me just do my thing here. So it was not the right time.
Yeah, I think that's where it can really come from people like Google who have such a trusted place in people's lives. It's your email that they're protecting, right? It's not just a shopping site. And so there's a different level of maybe willingness to add MFA to that account that will make you at least willing to read more about passkeys. Like I said before, if you're going through a checkout flow, you're in the middle of trying to do something else, like it's not the right time to tell you about passkeys, right? You have to, when you're already doing account related activities, like if you had to reset your password, that's a great time to offer someone to add a passkey because you just had to go through the pain of resetting a password, right? Or letting people know in other ways and not blocking their flow. One of the big things we've seen is I expect e-commerce to be an industry that adopts this type of technology pretty quickly. We've seen people like Home Depot and Best Buy and eBay adopt passkeys pretty early. And there's really big benefits for those types of companies because if you can get more people to sign in and convert and they're not running into issues trying to check out, that's a huge win for your business. But what we found is that if you do passkeys, or if you implement passkeys wrong, it actually hurts your conversions. If you just put a button on your website with a passkey icon on it, And like, that's not going to work. People are just going to click it. It's not really going to work. You're not sure what to expect. And so you really have to be smart about how you introduce the technology to people to give them sort of like conditional flows at certain points. Like only show them this button if they actually could log in with a passkey. Like don't just always have this button here. And it's really small things like that that actually go a long way in making sure your implementation goes well. And that's a lot of what we spend our time thinking about at Passage is like, how can we worry about all that stuff for you and make sure we're giving you the best experience.
So how does Passage determine that this person can have a passkey? How are you doing it?
Yeah, there's a lot of things involved in that actually.
Else, then.
Yeah, one big if else statement. Yeah, so every platform does passkeys a little bit different. The APIs are fairly consistent, but the way in which like the support levels are different. Safari requires there to be a user gesture before you can do a passkey prompt. Like there's a lot of sort of differences between different platforms and different browsers, things like that. So that's a big part of what we do is like manage, like, can I even use a passkey on this device? And then we'll also keep track for users, what are their passkeys and what platforms are they on? And, where am I right now? And should I be able to log in on that? And so it's a lot of just like conditional checking and like trying really hard not to let users see errors, right? We want to really minimize the times that a user runs into an error because that's just going to scare them away from passkeys.
Right.
Yeah.
How does it work when somebody signs up but then switches devices? So let's say I come to example.com, which is powered by Passage, right? And I say, I'd like to sign up. I'm Jared Santo. Here's my passkey. Click a button. I sign up. It's all well and good. And then I come to it on my iPad later that same day, and I say, I'm Jared Santo. I'm on a new device. How do you know I'm me?
Yeah, good question. So there's a few sort of levels to that. The first one depends on where your passkey is stored. So if it was on a MacBook and your iCloud account is used on both that iPad.
Okay, so iCloud would sync it.
Yeah, exactly. The iCloud will sync it and it'll just be there.
Okay.
The same is true for 1Password. So even if you stored that passkey on a MacBook in 1Password, and then you go to your Android phone, which also has the 1Password app, you would still have access to your passkey there. And so a big part of this like synced passkey initiative is exactly that, to make passkeys available on all the different platforms. In the event that that's not the case, then Passage or the website, whoever's doing it, will have a backup or a recovery type of option to let you either use a passkey on another device or to add a passkey to that device, usually through like an email magic link or something along those lines.
I see. So on sign up, you probably captured my email, and then you can say, okay, we don't know who you are. You're on a different device and you're not synced or something like this. I'm sure you'll be that kind as you in your copy. Who are you and what are you doing here? And then you'll say, okay, well, you don't have a passkey. Would you like to generate one using your email address or something like that? And then you'd go through kind of a magic link flow that would then generate a new passkey on my new device and then add it to my list of passkeys for that website.
Exactly, if you want to. There's this flow. I don't know if y'all have seen it, if you've used passkeys in this way yet, but if you create a passkey on one device and go to another device, sometimes it'll pop up with a QR code that you scan on your phone that has your passkey, and then it will like sync it over Bluetooth kind of.
Oh, wow.
It's called like a hybrid flow. It's sort of a new thing that we're experimenting with for cross-platform passkeys. And it's kind of confusing, but it does exist. And the idea is you could have like your iPhone has your passkey, and you can just kind of carry that around in your pocket and use that passkey on public computers or shared computers or places you don't want to store a passkey. And so there's a lot of these different types and formats of passkeys, but it's really hard to kind of like keep track of all those different options. And so that's kind of what Passage does, right? Yeah.
So is your phone then in that case, I know we're getting into the weeds on a very specific thing, but that's what we do here.
Necessary weeds.
Is your phone that scans the QR code then, is it passing the challenge response over that? Or is it actually, it's not taking the private key and giving it to this public computer, right? Like it's doing the challenge on the phone and passing the response maybe?
Right. It's getting the challenge from the computer that you're trying to log into, and then it'll sign it on your iPhone or whatever, and then send it back. Yep.
That's not much different than OTP, really, in that case, because it does require the other thing.
In terms of user experience?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean,
yeah.
It's really a strange world. I'm going to go back to Home Depot because I have to. This is my only experience with passkeys. I have authenticated because I'm mobile in the store. I did it on my phone. And then I come back to my Mac and I did this the other day. I'm like, now I have 2 passkeys, 1 per device to Home Depot. And then now we're here on this call and I go back to I logged out of Home Depot. I was like, what's the flow? So let's just use them as a potentially wise implementation poster child for this. So I plug in my email address because they do require something to say, who is this person? That's my email address. This is Adam. I click continue. And then the native Safari, I'm using Safari as a browser, comes up and it says, not like I just got an issue. Just now I'm trying to do this again. Gosh, this is failing. Live demos fail.
Well, at least it's not our software.
Yeah, right. Well, it came up and it says, do you want to sign in with this passkey or click this blue link that says there's other sign-in options? And one of them was a scan it, like you had just said, Anna, where you go on a different device and do that passage back and forth.
These guys are on top of it. They got the hybrid flow already?
Yeah, they seem to. And then this other one, let me see if I can get this back up. Oh, now they're making me do it a different way. Now they have defaulted, since I didn't do it the way they wanted me to with a passkey. Now they're making me verify the code via email again, which is okay, I guess, because I can still get in. My concern was like, if passkeys fail, am I locked out? Like, do I now have to only passkey on this device? Apparently no. But long story short, there was another way to go in. It was scan a QR code. And I think the other one was like, I don't even know what it was. It was like 3 different options. Do you know what that third option might be?
Mother's maiden name, your first pet.
Yeah, all your security questions.
Right. Mom's maiden name, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely think most websites, and definitely what I'm seeing is most websites are not implementing passkeys full stop. There's always some sort of backup. So if you're using Passage, that backup is usually still passwordless. It's magic links or login codes typically for people who just like, some people don't have devices that support passkeys. So we got to give them an option. For a lot of websites like Home Depot that are sort of like have huge, large user bases and are just like, I just want to test it out with a small subset, they'll keep their passwords, right? And then they'll just sort of add this as an option. And so you can always fall back to your password or to an OTP code or whatever, all these different options that they have to log in. It looks like they have quite a few. But I'm really seeing it happen as like an add-on. Like you can opt into this feature, but it's not necessarily the default or even like something that they're really heavily forcing on people. It's like, let's get it out there. Let's give people who want it the opportunity to try it out. And then we'll kind of expand and migrate over time.
What's up, friends? I'm here in the breaks with one of our sponsors, Raycast. I'm here with Thomas Paul Mann, the co-founder and CEO of Raycast. So Thomas, I recently moved from Alfred to Raycast. I'm on the Pro plan, loving the AI integrations and everything else helped me to be productive. Also helped you launch the Pro plan recently on Changelog News. That was awesome. But what I want to know is why you built Raycast in the first place.
I think software, as we experience, is flawed and inefficient. And I know this is a pretty big and bold statement, but this is really where the idea from Raycast comes from. Because when you think about it, when you interact with a computer, you have like a certain action in your mind that you want to do. To perform that, you need to translate that into clicks and keystrokes on a computer. And that isn't really intuitive. That's not how we used to work. When we grab something in the real world, we just grab it and do it. Like there is no communication or something like that necessary. But somehow we got used to that this is how software works. And we work around that. It kind of works, but I feel really it's an inefficient way to use a computer. So with Raycast, we re-envisioned that and we said, what is if I could use all my tools in a single interface? They look the same, they behave the same. I'm super efficient at it. I just enter what I want to do. Everything is driven by the keyboard, which I'm used to as a developer. We basically started building exactly that and started with the basics of like, what if I could launch an application? That's an easy task, right? What if I could find a file that I'm looking for? Okay, that's nice. But at some point reached then the threshold where we said, oh, but now I need to create a Jira issue or see my assigned issues and change the status. And that is where it gets really interesting. It quickly became clear to us like, wow, okay, there is actually demand for that. That was really the start of Raycast, where we felt this is something special. There are like so many people who want to be more productive. They want to have a great tool that they can use. but they're also willing to put in a bit of work of maybe integrating with their own services that we don't have support for now.
Okay, cool. So one of the things that stood out to me for your homepage when kind of learning about Raycast and discovering what it can do, it says in big, bold letters on the homepage, supercharge your productivity. Why is that the leading statement for Raycast?
Yeah, so for us, productivity is like, it's very hard to measure if you look down for it. People say they can do something faster. People say they're more productive, but it's very hard to quantify. So we thought, hey, we have a tool that generally just makes you more productive in many different ways. So it supercharges your productivity. It brings us to the next level. You like just can do things much faster than anybody else. You can interact with your tools quicker. You're basically like operating on a different level. There's always a saying of a 10x developer, which can do things a lot faster, right? So it goes along those lines where when you see people using a Mac with Raycast, they use a Mac differently to somebody that uses a Mac without Raycast.
Okay, so if you're on a Mac and you want to be productive, you owe it to yourself to try Raycast. You can try it free. Almost everything they have is free. I mean, lots. I mean, I told him, Thomas, you kind of give away too much for free, but hey, that's their choice, right? But if you want to be productive on a Mac, Raycast. If you're using a launcher, if you're using Spotlight, or anything like it, Raycast will take you to a whole new level. I'm using it. I love it. I think you should check it out. Go to raycast.com. Again, raycast.com.
I just had an idea. Only passkey-based sign-up as a means of spam prevention. Because I bet the spammers are not onto this yet. Like, they probably don't have the flows in their bots that will do, because they'll click on it, sign-up links, like confirmation emails, like they're that sophisticated now. They will get through your CAPTCHA, then they will click on their confirmation email, and then they will spam your website. But I bet they don't have passkey flows all figured out yet because it's just too new. So if you just required passkeys, I'm just thinking about us in particular. I wouldn't do this if I was Home Depot. Like, then you got a real person with a real passkey and you don't have to deal with spammers as much, Adam. What do you think? Require it.
Yeah. I guess if you're a sophisticated user, you can do that, sure. Because if you want to go the route of only passkeys, then yeah.
Well, I would only do that to stop spammers. I wouldn't do that otherwise because I think it's too heavy-handed otherwise.
Right.
I mean, most people out there. Let's talk about transitions. I mean, we're in a password world. I do think as users, we're getting more used to passwordless because of the advancements. Like, for instance, like Apple Pay, Samsung Pay. Like, we're getting used to the idea of like, just Face ID it, just tap it here, right? Put your thumb here. And so I think we'll be just as a population ready to adopt these things. But we have to get there from here. And a lot of us have websites with, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of users that have passwords that we're managing. What do you suggest for us in terms of like, we just add this as an option? Do we push it real hard? What do we do?
Yeah. So from a business or developer perspective, I can kind of see both sides. I personally think it's kind of worth going fully passwordless if you can, and still having those fallbacks of magic links or OTP codes, which are still a little bit better than passwords, right? Even if they're not great and they're familiar to users enough, I think. But I also think it's important to give people the option to just add on to whatever they have right now, right? I think that's faster, it's easier. And if we want to like incentivize developers and businesses to implement passkeys, we have to make it really easy. We can't make them like lift and shift their entire authentication infrastructure. I just don't think that's reasonable. And so I think it'll be a lot of sort of like Home Depot has, where you have a password option and maybe you even always register with a password and then you can just add a passkey on top of that as a faster sign-in. I think that like still getting people used to that user experience is what's gonna lead the charge. On the passage front, we kind of support both of those options. We have a product called Flex that is basically that. It's like, we'll do the passkey management for you, but you still handle all your user management, your password management, whatever other authentication you want to do, we'll just add it on top. And so I think that's a lot easier for websites like Home Depot to go do than it is to maybe make that full switch. If they're just not totally convinced of the benefits yet, they get to see it in action first.
These guys are ahead of their times. I'll tell you, that's for sure. So I finally got back to this. If you don't mind going back one more time.
That's why they're better than Lowe's.
Well, I'm all about user experience, and this is what it says. So going back to your thing and what you just said, which is provide the ability to sign up with a password, the typical way that everybody does, and they then layer on more higher security. And that's the thing they give me first because they know now that I have a passkey with them on this device. So they're going to say, well, Adam, hey, you're back. Sign in with your passkey first. Oh, that failed. Let me give you the one-time password I just emailed to you. Oh, that failed. Okay, you can use your password. So it's like layers. And so I finally got it to give me this prompt back. So I guess my passkey got obliterated because I didn't respond fast enough with my fingerprint. So like, forget it. You can't have that option anymore. So now the only way I can get back into this thing is with my password or the one-time code they give me via email. So I did that. And as soon as the very next thing I did once I got this code back in my email, they said, okay, now you can sign in faster on this device. And it gives me what looks like a Finder type icon with like a face in it, which I think represents Face ID. Maybe that's the Face ID.
Is that the passkey icon or is it Face ID?
It might be the Face ID icon. I don't know that one very well. The fingerprint and then a key. And it says enable face or fingerprint ID. And then below that it says, what is this? And it explains it. I push that big orange button because that's the color of Home Depot. My gosh, Home Depot, you should be sponsoring this show. Too much praise for you. And then they let me in. They're like, bam, you've got this. They never said passkey though. They never said WebAuthn.
Did they say BAM?
They didn't say BAM. Not like.
Okay. Did they spice it up a notch?
They did not say BAM. They didn't even say no password. They just said faster. They described what you said before, which was the thing I want, which is like ease of use,
right?
Good user experience and speed. So that's closing the loop. Thank you.
Thank you for closing that loop.
And I think people like, okay, if everyone's logged into like an iPhone app with their Face ID before, right?
Totally.
Like your banking app or something like that. So in that context, it's a pretty familiar thing to say, log in with your face or log in with your fingerprint. So I think they're kind of playing off of that familiarity that people have to something kind of like it, even if it's not quite the same. So it got you there eventually.
Right.
I'm back in. Passkey away.
Crisis averted. Adam is back in at Home Depot. Whew. He was about to go to Lowe's, but he didn't.
I was never going to go to Lowe's. No more lumber for me at this point. No more things. No more tools.
Okay.
Let me mention some other brands I like. Ryobi. I like Ryobi.
You don't need to just name all these brands. They're not necessary.
I like Rubbermaid. That's my favorite garbage can.
I don't think they support passkeys on their website.
Yeah, not yet. Traditional padlocks.
Get us back on track, Jared. Please help me.
So the other area that we haven't really talked much about, which I think is burgeoning because we're fresh off of the WWDC keynote, there was some Apple announcements around passkeys and sharing, I think. I think when you get into teams, you get into sharing families. Just like a password, we have password problems around here. Give me the password. Did you update the password? Yes. Can you give it to me again? Write it on a scratch note, put it on my desk, right? I think all these problems are going to also be there with something that you have, which is a passkey. So is there like a passkeys native solution to this? Or is it all just like, well, Apple's going to handle sharing, Google's going to handle sharing, 1Password's going to handle sharing? Yeah.
So it's that second one. It's going to be on the provider to share in whatever sort of native way they have. So, for iCloud, you can share through Keychain. The same way I think you can share other types of items. In 1Password, you've been able to share passwords with people or move them to different vaults for years. It'll be a very similar experience. And I think it's really important that all of those things still exist for passkeys, right? We can't reduce the functionality you get or the way that you operate as a family or as a business to be able to share things just to get this higher security. You kind of have to go both ways. WWDC was interesting this year because they announced a few exciting passkey related things, actually. One of them was around sharing and teams and things like that. The other was support for syncing through external providers, so providers like 1Password. So Google announced this fairly recently as well. So once Android 14 and iOS 17 come out, 1Password will be a native passkey provider. And it when you get that passkey prompt on your phone, you'll be able to select a passkey directly from 1Password instead of Google or iCloud. And you can kind of see all of those and switch between them, which is a really exciting update for us. It's really important for us. And we've worked very closely with those companies to be able to support things like that. So we're personally really excited about being able to give that to our users. And they also announced some cool work around enterprise passkeys and being able to use passkeys in a managed environment. So if you want to enforce in your enterprise that passkeys are coming from a device that has an MDM solution on it, you can do that. So that's kind of a cool thing coming out of Apple too.
What's MDM?
Like a mobile device management software. So,
Okay.
My MacBook has, I don't know what it's called. We have some sort of software that we run, right, to manage our devices. And so that way I know it's a corporate device. It's not some random laptop that I've brought and tried to authenticate with a passkey. I can say like, this is an iCloud passkey for this enterprise, and you can kind of attest cryptographically to that.
Mm-hmm.
I assume Passkeys has some kind of revocation process similar to like OAuth, where you can say, kick out all current devices, or can you target a specific device and say, throw this passkey away? Is that all part of the spec?
Yeah, so you can do it either on like the client side, like you could delete a passkey from your iCloud account or from your 1Password account, or on a website, you could go in, you'll see like usually a list of passkeys like in your profile, and you can delete them from there as well. So you can kind of have the website forget your passkeys, or you can like delete the private key from your device. Either one would work.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds good. Where do I buy one?
Hopefully you already have one.
I don't know what else to say. I feel like we've covered so much, and I just feel like it's up for web developers to go out there and start implementing this. And people, tell your friends, like, we got to get the word passkey out there and all these stuff. And the passwordless future is like right here in front of us, it seems like. I don't know. That's just way too rosy. What are the drawbacks? Let's get some. We're too excited. We have to settle down. Anna, tell us the cons. There have to be cons.
There definitely are a few downsides, though. My coworker, Nick Steele, likes to say it's the hot girl summer of passkeys this year. So I do think it'll be like when everything kind of takes off. But I think that comes with time and implementation challenges and all these things we're talking about with Home Depot, even of like, oh, okay, like I did this, but it didn't quite work. And then I do this other method. Like, I think there's going to be a lot of sort of confusion around that type of stuff at first. And that's why a lot of these websites are implementing them sort of slowly alongside of passwords, because we just have to get people familiar with it and educate people. And I think once they see that first passkey and get to use it, they want it places, but it's just going to take time for websites to feel comfortable implementing it. And so we're all about just how do we help, right? How do we make this go a little bit faster for businesses, for developers, for end users, like just get everyone comfortable with the technology and able to get there. And then I think it's a big win, right? I think it's kind of a given that it's going to happen. And this is the direction, the internet is going, but it'll just take some time, have some growing pains for sure.
Is the goal of Passage to provide these SDKs so that they don't have to implement it on their own or themselves and have to, I don't even know. Home Depot may be a Passage user. You may not even know. Who knows?
They're not, unfortunately.
They're not.
I wish.
Gosh, Home Depot, get it together. Sponsor the show and use Passage.
Exactly.
If they use Passage, though, they will get the blessed way. You all have put all the work in to ensure the workflows are right, to ensure if, I didn't, put my fingerprint down in time, it didn't obliterate my passkey and make me go back to some other method. It's like, hey, Adam gets a chance to try later. They can use all the blessed ways you've tested, tried, put out there. That's the reason Passage exists, right?
Exactly. 100%.
Okay. What's next then? How do people use Passage?
Yeah, so it's free to sign up. Developers can just go to passage.onepassword.com, check it out. You can sign up, start building apps with it. We have a few different options and ways to do it. We have a Discord you can join if you want to chat with us. But our goal is to just let you go build stuff. You don't have to talk to us or anything like that if you don't want to. If you're just a regular user, like Adam, you were saying, you've only used a passkey one time basically on Home Depot. We also have a fun website called passkeys.directory where we have a big list of all the websites that have passkeys. And so if you haven't used passkeys yet, go check it out. You'll probably find a site that you've used before and you can actually go add a passkey and see what it's like for the first time. And I think especially as developers, once you see that, of course you want to give that to your users. And so I think it kind of helps to see it in action. A lot of the different user flows we've talked about are kind of confusing when you're just talking out loud, but once you see it happen for real, I think it just clears a lot of things up.
Mm-hmm. It also looks like there is a fair number of repos on GitHub. I'm sure like if you go out and you're using Rails, there's probably somebody who's laid some groundwork for Ruby on Rails. If you're using Next.js, there's probably some people who've laid some groundwork for Next.js. Even just the Passkeys topic on GitHub has 54 public repositories. So I think there's probably a lot of resources, a lot of tools, a lot of starting places where folks can get started with this on their particular platforms.
Yes, tons of open source repos, libraries, examples, like lots of good places to get started.
Yeah. And a lot of these are actually called WebAuthn still. So maybe like the word Passkeys is just burgeoning, but not quite there, especially on older implementations that maybe you don't want to use directly, but can just be your inspiration if you're going to hand roll something. I would love to see how it works, inside of our Elixir and Phoenix framework, like to do it by hand or to do it with Passage and maybe even compare the two differences. I think that'd be super cool. But yeah, lots of resources. We'll definitely link up those things in the episode show notes. Anything else? Anything left unsaid that we haven't asked you or talked about, Anna?
Adam, you had one, you were talking about like your mobile military ID or something like that you use at Home Depot, right? This reminded me of a really cool thing that is kind of post Passkeys, right? It's probably like a while out still, but I think it's the future and it's a really cool thing to think about, called verifiable credentials. And it's basically mobile, like verified mobile IDs and things like that. And so letting you like store your verified military ID in your wallet, like in your iPhone wallet or in your 1Password, and using that to like verify over the internet without you having to like scan your phone all the time. And it's like, it's very much similar to like a passkey type of protocol. It's sort of like the next evolution of that and like something that's kind of coming after passkeys. And I think it's cool how there's just so much exciting like identity-based new technology coming out in the next few years, I think. It's just a lot of cool stuff to make your life easier on the internet. And the fact that you brought that up just kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah, for sure. They make me do it every single time. Every time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, whatever could make that easier would be great.
Yeah.
They have it built into their site, though. It's like I have to authenticate with Home Depot. They're getting so much press this time around. I was looking on passkeys.directory, too. Mm-hmm. And, sure enough, Home Depot is listed there. So
there, you're really closing the loop.
So many Home Depot mentions on this show. I can't wait to see the transcript. It's going to be amazing. So nothing left unsaid. No directions for our listeners. Obviously, go to check out Passage. Where's the best place to find resources or just to learn? Is it Passage in your Slack or Discord or different places? Like, how can developers get educated on passkeys at large?
Yeah, so, we can definitely help as much as possible. We have a lot of resources on our website. There's also a great resource called passkeys.dev that is, I think, largely the FIDO Alliance, along with Tim Capali from Microsoft, has put together a lot of developer-focused resources just about WebAuthn and passkeys. That's really, really great. That's the other one that comes to mind.
Passkeys.dev. We'll link all these up, as Jared mentioned, in the show notes. Anna, thank you for literally schooling us on passkeys. We had no idea. I had no idea. Jared may have had half of an idea at least. It sounded like it.
I did. I had about a half, maybe a third of an idea.
I just can't believe you're a Lowe's fan. Gosh.
I just said that to spite you.
Oh, of course. That's right. I forget that you have to be against what I'm for.
I always do that. I just take the other side. Well, you're so for it. I just feel like we need a balance on
It's orange.
I like Menards.
Okay.
Do you guys have that?
No.
I don't know what that is.
Ace. We like Ace around here. Ace is the place.
Ace is a good place for just like, if you have to have like the most obscure bolt or like, some weird shaped nut and you got to just buy one of them, you go to Ace, you pay like 17 cents. They always have it.
Ace.
Brought to you by hardware stores. All of them.
Who would have thought?
Who would have thought? Yeah. Well, thanks, Anna. It's been awesome.
Yeah, this is fun. Thanks, guys.
Okay, this is 100% serious. Okay, I'm a big fan, as you could probably tell from this episode. I'm a big fan of Home Depot, okay? Nothing wrong with Lowe's necessarily. My brother-in-law works at Lowe's. I got no ill feelings to anybody or the company, Lowe's. But my choice, my personal choice, is Home Depot. Okay, so if you work at Home Depot, if you're in the engineering department at Home Depot, hook us up. Make a connection. I'd love to have Home Depot sponsor this show. I would wear an orange shirt. And if you know me personally, you know that I'm a black, grayscale person. I don't wear orange or purple or pink. I wear black tones all the time, okay? So I'm a grayscale kind of guy, but I'd wear Home Depot orange, okay? So if you're there, get in touch. Sorry about that. I had to do it because I'm a fan of Home Depot. But hope you enjoyed that show with Anna Pobletts. Passkeys, is this the future of passwordless? Is this where we're going? Is this what's getting us there? Let us know in the comments. The link is in the show notes. We want to hear from you. I want to give a big shout out to our friends and our partners at Fastly, Fly, and TypeSense. And also to the mysterious, the wonderful, the awesome Breakmaster Cylinder. We love you, Breakmaster. And of course, to you, our listeners, we love you too. Thank you for listening to the show. Thank you for tuning in all the way to the very end to hear me rattle off all the thanks, all the praise, all the announcements, all the what's next. Speaking of what's next, Adam Jacobs, System Initiative. Next week on the show, launching System Initiative. So cool. Well, that's it. This show is done. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you on Friday.